Hello and welcome. Perhaps you're lying in bed right now, the day settling around you like dust after a long journey. Maybe you're seeking a moment of quiet in a world that rarely pauses. Either way, you've arrived at a space where we can drift together through one of the most beautiful and unsettling ideas that physics has ever offered us. Tonight, we're going to explore a possibility that sounds like science fiction but emerges directly from our best understanding of reality. What if every version of you, the child you were at 5 years old, the person you'll be tomorrow morning, the you reading these words right this moment, what if all of these exist simultaneously, not as memories or predictions, but as real present experiences happening right now in a structure physicists call the block universe? It's a strange thought to hold in your mind. We're so accustomed to time flowing like a river, carrying us from past toward future. But what if that flow is an illusion? What if all moments, every laugh, every tear, every quiet night like this one, exist together in an eternal frozen architecture of space-time? We'll move slowly through this idea, turning it gently in different lights, exploring what science suggests and what remains beautifully unknown. There's no rush, no pressure to understand everything at once, just curiosity and wonder and the strange comfort of contemplating your place in the cosmos. Let's begin where we all begin, with the feeling of time passing. Right now, as you rest here, you can sense it. The present moment seems to exist, vivid and immediate, while the past recedes behind you like a wake, and the future waits somewhere ahead, unformed and approaching. This sensation is so fundamental to being human that it's almost impossible to imagine experience without it. The ancient Greek philosopher Heraclitus captured something essential when he observed that you cannot step in the same river twice. The water flows, constantly replaced, never the same from one moment to the next. He meant it as a statement about change, but it's also a perfect metaphor for how we experience time. Always moving, always flowing, always carrying us forward, whether we wish it or not. And yet, here's the first gentle mystery we encounter. When neuroscientists study how our brains construct our sense of time, they find something remarkable. The present moment you're experiencing right now isn't actually instantaneous. Your brain takes sensory information arriving at slightly different times and weaves it into a coherent experience lasting perhaps 2 to 3 seconds. The now you feel is already a construction, a story your mind tells itself. Consider how you perceive a sentence being spoken. You don't experience each word in isolation. You hold them together, creating meaning from the flow. Your brain is constantly integrating past and immediate present into what feels like a single moment of experience. Time in your consciousness is already something more complex than simple flow. This leads us to wonder if our most intimate experience of time is constructed rather than directly perceived. What might we be missing about time's true nature? What if the flow we feel so certain about is more like a dream than we imagine? A convincing illusion created by the particular way our consciousness moves through reality. Some physicists and philosophers have begun to suspect exactly this. They suggest that the flowing river Heraclitus described might be more like a frozen landscape, through which our attention travels, mistaking our journey for the motion of the landscape itself. It's a strange thought, one that feels almost impossible to hold, and yet, as we'll see, some of our deepest discoveries about the universe point gently but insistently in this direction. In 1905, a young patent clerk in Switzerland published a paper that quietly shattered humanity's understanding of time. Albert Einstein's special theory of relativity didn't just introduce new equations, it revealed that something we thought was absolute and universal, the present moment, the now that we all presumably share, doesn't exist in the way we imagine. The insight emerged from thinking carefully about light. Light travels at a fixed speed, about 300,000 kilometers per second, regardless of how you're moving when you measure it. This simple fact, confirmed by experiments, has profound implications. If light speed is absolute but we can move at different velocities relative to each other, then something else must be flexible. That something turns out to be time itself. Here's where it becomes wonderfully strange. Imagine two observers, one standing still and one moving past at high speed. An event happens, say, a flash of light. When exactly did that flash occur? You might think the answer is obvious, that there's a single moment in time when the flash happened. But Einstein showed that the two observers will disagree, and both will be correct. Their nows are different. The The present moment is not universal, it's relative. This isn't just theoretical abstraction. Atomic clocks flown on airplanes tick at slightly different rates than identical clocks left on the ground, exactly as Einstein's equations predict. Particles accelerated to near light speed in laboratories experience time dilation. They decay more slowly than their stationary counterparts, living longer from our perspective because time itself is passing more slowly for them. What does this mean for the river of time? If your now and someone else's now can be different moments, if simultaneity itself is relative rather than absolute, then perhaps all moments exist equally. The past hasn't disappeared, and the future hasn't yet come into being. Instead, all of space-time might exist as a complete four-dimensional structure, with our consciousness somehow traveling through it, creating the illusion of flow. Einstein himself seemed to sense this. In a letter written after the death of his friend Mikhail Besso, he wrote, "Now he has departed from this strange world, a little ahead of me. That means nothing. People like us who believe in physics know that the distinction between past, present and future is only a stubbornly persistent illusion." It's a striking statement from one of history's greatest physicists, the flow of time as illusion, all moments equally real and present in some deeper sense. We're left with a question that's both scientific and deeply personal. What does it mean for your experience right now if time doesn't truly flow? To make sense of Einstein's revelation, physicists developed a metaphor that has become both illuminating and haunting: the block universe, sometimes called the loaf of bread model of spacetime. Picture a loaf of bread sitting on a counter. The loaf exists as a complete unified object. You can slice it, and each slice represents a different cross-section of the whole, but the entire loaf is there all at once. Now imagine that this loaf is the universe. Each slice represents a moment in time, a complete three-dimensional snapshot of all space at one particular instant. Your birth is one slice. This present moment, as you rest here contemplating these ideas, is another slice. Your death will be yet another slice. Far along the loaf, all of these slices exist simultaneously within the four-dimensional block of space-time. In this picture, the flow of time is not the creation of new slices, but rather your consciousness moving through slices that already exist. Imagine a flashlight beam slowly scanning across the loaf, illuminating one slice at a time. The beam moves, but the bread doesn't. Similarly, your awareness might move through time, but time itself, the complete four-dimensional structure, simply exists eternally and unchangingly. This is profoundly different from our intuitive understanding. We imagine the past as gone, vanished into nothingness. We think of the future as not yet real, a blank space waiting to be filled by events unfolding. But in the block universe, both past and future are as real as the present. Your childhood exists right now, not as memory, but as a living moment somewhere in the structure of space-time. Tomorrow's sunrise exists right now, already there in its slice of the loaf, waiting only for your consciousness to arrive at it. The metaphor has limits, of course. A loaf of bread sits in space, but the block universe doesn't sit in anything. It's the totality of all space and all time, with no outside, and consciousness isn't really a flashlight beam. The mechanism by which we experience one moment at a time remains mysterious, but the image captures something essential: the possibility that all moments coexist, equally real, eternally present. Some find this idea deeply comforting. Nothing is ever truly lost. Every beautiful moment you've experienced exists forever in the structure of reality. The embrace you shared with a loved one years ago isn't gone. It's still happening, permanently inscribed in its particular location in space-time. Every laugh, every connection, every instant of peace, all preserved eternally. Others find it unsettling. If the future already exists, if your entire life is already laid out in the block, what happens to free will? What does it mean to make choices if every choice and its consequences already exist, frozen in the four-dimensional ice? We'll circle back to these questions. For now, simply hold the image, a loaf of bread, representing all of time, all at once. Let's look more carefully at what the mathematics of physics actually tells us about time. This isn't about equations for their own sake, but about understanding what our best theories quietly suggest about reality's fundamental structure. The clues are subtle but persistent. Einstein's field equations, the mathematical heart of general relativity, describe how matter and energy curve space-time. These equations treat time as a dimension essentially equal to the 3 dimensions of space. When a physicist writes down these equations, there's no variable for now, no mathematical marker that distinguishes one moment as special or more real than others. Time is simply a coordinate, like north-south or east-west, labeling positions in a 4-dimensional geometry. Think about what this means. When we describe something happening in space, we give it 3 numbers: latitude, longitude, and altitude. These coordinates don't create the location, they simply label where it is. Similarly, when we describe something happening in space-time, we give it 4 numbers, 3 for where and 1 for when. The time coordinate doesn't represent something flowing or coming into being, it just labels a position in the 4-dimensional structure. Moreover, the equations of physics are almost entirely symmetric with respect to time direction. If you filmed most physical processes and played the film backward, the reversed version would still obey the laws of physics. A planet orbiting a star clockwise looks, mathematically, much like a planet orbiting counterclockwise. Particles colliding and bouncing apart follow the same equations as particles approaching from separation. Past and future are, in the mathematics, nearly interchangeable. There are exceptions. Certain processes involving entropy and quantum mechanics show a preference for time direction. We'll explore these later, as they're crucial to the full picture, but the striking fact is how much of physics treats past and future as simply 2 directions in time, no different fundamentally than north and south as directions in space. Some physicists and philosophers argue that this mathematical time symmetry is evidence for the block universe. If the laws of nature don't privilege one moment over another, if there's no now variable in our best equations, perhaps that's because all moments exist equally. The mathematics might be telling us something profound about reality's structure, that it's a frozen, eternal 4-dimensional block rather than a 3-dimensional space evolving through time. Others counter that the mathematics is just a tool, a description rather than a revelation. Perhaps time does flow, but our equations simply can't capture that flow. The map is not the territory. Just because our mathematical maps treat time as a dimension, doesn't mean that's what time really is. This tension between mathematical description and physical reality runs deep in modern physics. Do our equations reveal truth, or merely provide useful predictions? It's a question without easy answers, and that uncertainty is itself a kind of beauty, a reminder that even our most powerful theories leave room for mystery and wonder. To understand how cause and effect work in a block universe, we need to explore one of relativity's most elegant structures, the light cone. Imagine yourself at a single point in space-time, right here, right now. From this point, light spreads outward in all directions at its constant speed. If we trace where that light will be at future moments, we create a cone expanding upward through time. This is your future light cone, the region of space-time you can potentially influence. Similarly, light from distant events has been traveling toward you. Everything that could have sent light that reaches you right now forms your past light cone, the region of space-time that can have influenced your present moment. These cones divide all of space-time into 3 regions: your past events that could have affected you, your future events you could potentially affect, and elsewhere, events that are too far away in space and too close in time for light to have connected you. Here's what's remarkable. This structure exists even in a block universe where all moments are equally real. Causation doesn't require time to flow. It's simply the geometric relationship between events in the 4-dimensional structure. Your birth is in the past light cone of this moment, meaning it causally connects to now. Your breakfast tomorrow is in your future light cone, meaning your actions now can influence it. These relationships are frozen into the geometry of space-time itself. Think of it like a landscape. A river flows from mountains to sea because of the landscape's geometry. Higher elevation here, lower there. The water doesn't create the downward slope. The slope already exists, determining where water flows. Similarly, causation in a block universe is determined by the geometric structure. Events are connected by time-like paths, and causation flows along those paths, not because time is flowing, but because the geometry permits certain connections and forbids others. This helps address one of the deepest worries about the block universe. If everything is frozen and predetermined, how can we have free will? How can our choices matter? The answer, perhaps, is that our choices are part of the structure. Your decision tomorrow is already there in the block, yes, but it's there as your decision, caused by the flow of events along your world line, your path through space-time. It's analogous to a story already written in a book. The ending is there on the final page, existing simultaneously with the beginning, but the ending still follows from the earlier chapters. The protagonist's choices still matter to how the story unfolds, even though all the pages exist together. The causal connections between events are preserved in their structure. This doesn't resolve all questions about free will. Philosophers have debated determinism and choice for millennia, and the block universe adds new dimensions to old arguments, but it suggests that a frozen universe isn't necessarily a fatalistic one. Causation, choice, and influence can be geometric features of the block structure, rather than requiring the flow of time. We're left wondering, does knowing your future exists change its nature? If you could somehow see ahead to tomorrow's slice of the loaf, would it still unfold the same way? We've journeyed through some of physics' deepest insights about time, and we've arrived at a strange possibility that time doesn't flow at all, that all moments exist eternally in a four-dimensional block. Yet here you are, undeniably experiencing this moment as special, as uniquely present. The past feels gone, the future not yet here. If time doesn't flow, what is this overwhelming sensation we call the passage of time? This might be the deepest mystery in all of physics and philosophy, the nature of consciousness and its relationship to time. Our subjective experience seems fundamentally at odds with the block universe picture. We don't feel like we're static points in a frozen structure. We feel ourselves moving through time, experiencing change, aging, remembering past, and anticipating future. Some philosophers suggest that consciousness itself is what flows or moves through the block universe. Imagine again that loaf of bread, with each slice representing a moment. Perhaps consciousness is like a spotlight slowly traversing the loaf, illuminating one slice at a time. The slices don't change, they're eternally as they are, but consciousness moves, creating the subjective experience of time passing. You at age 5 exists in one slice, forever 5, while a different version of consciousness, also you, exists in another slice. Reading these words, but this raises immediate questions. What makes consciousness move? Is there some meta-time in which consciousness flows, separate from the time coordinate in space-time? And if so, haven't we just recreated the problem we were trying to solve, the mystery of flow, by pushing it to a different level? Other thinkers suggest that the experience of flow is an illusion, but a necessary one. Perhaps consciousness only works by comparing states, this moment to previous moments held in short-term memory. The constant comparison creates the feeling of change, of movement, even though nothing is actually flowing. It's like watching a film. Individual frames flash by, creating the illusion of motion. Each frame is static, but the succession creates the experience of continuous change. Or perhaps the answer is even stranger. Maybe each moment of consciousness exists only in its own slice, with no actual continuity between them. The you now and the you 1 second ago are genuinely different beings, connected by memory and causal links, but not by any flow of consciousness. What we call the stream of consciousness might be more like a series of still photographs, each one complete in itself, connected only by the story they tell when viewed together. These ideas feel almost impossible to evaluate. How could we ever know which is true? We can't step outside our own consciousness to observe it objectively. We're trapped, perhaps beautifully trapped, inside the very mystery we're trying to solve. What remains certain is this: whether time flows or stands still, whether the block universe is true or false, you are experiencing this moment. That experience, whatever its ultimate nature, is remarkable. Here, now, in whatever sense these words have meaning, you exist and are aware. That might be the deepest wonder of all. Let's make this personal. Let's bring the abstract physics home to your own life, your own memories, your own sense of who you are. Think back to when you were 5 years old. Maybe you can remember a specific moment, a birthday party perhaps, or a favorite toy, or the feeling of sun on your face during a summer afternoon. The memory might be vivid or hazy, but you know that child was you. You were 5 years old once. Now, here's the thought experiment at the heart of the block universe. If space-time is truly a four-dimensional block where all moments exist simultaneously, then that 5-year-old child isn't just a memory. According to this view, they're still there, still 5 years old, still experiencing that exact moment. not experiencing it again, not living in the past, experiencing it as their present, right now, in their slice of space-time. It's a dizzying idea. We're so accustomed to thinking of our past selves as gone, replaced by who we are now. We imagine ourselves as a single being moving through time, shedding old versions like skin cells. But the block universe suggests something else entirely, that all your ages exist simultaneously. 5-year-old you, 15-year-old you, the you reading this sentence, and every you in between, all coexisting in the eternal structure of space-time. Consider what this means for your childhood experiences. That moment of joy or fear or wonder that you recall, if the block universe is true, it's not merely preserved in your memory, it's still happening. The child you were is still living that moment, feeling those feelings, being exactly who they were. From their perspective, it's not the past, it's the present. They have no knowledge of you now, reading these words. To them, the future hasn't happened yet, but it has happened, because it's all laid out in the block. This creates a strange form of immortality, doesn't it? In the conventional view, your 5-year-old self died years ago, replaced gradually by the succession of older selves that led to who you are now. But in the block universe, that child never dies. They continue existing in their moment, eternal and unchanging. Every version of you that has ever existed continues to exist, forever, in their own temporal location. Some find this thought deeply moving. Nothing is truly lost. Every moment of happiness you've experienced, your first day of school, falling in love, holding your own child for the first time, all of these exist permanently. They're not past, they're simply earlier in your world line, but eternally present in their own right. The universe has kept them for you, inscribed forever in its 4-dimensional structure. Others find it melancholic. If every moment exists eternally, then so does every moment of pain, every loss, every grief. That difficult period of your life, you're still living through it, in a sense. Some version of you is perpetually trapped in that struggle, unable to escape because they simply exist there, frozen in their slice of time. But perhaps both responses miss something essential. These earlier versions of you aren't truly separate beings. They're you, experiencing your life from their temporal location, just as you're experiencing it from yours. The 5-year-old and the current you are like 2 points on a single line, both real, both part of the same continuous world, line threading through space-time. And that line, that world line, is the totality of who you are. If we take the block universe seriously, your life isn't really a journey through time, it's a shape in space-time. Physicists call this shape a world line, and visualizing it can transform how you think about existence itself. Imagine plotting your position in space at every moment of your life, then connecting all those points. The resulting curve, stretching from your birth to your death, is your world line, the complete geometric object that is you. This world line has a definite structure. It begins at a specific point in space-time, the moment and location of your birth. From there, it traces your movements through the 3 dimensions of space and the 1 dimension of time. When you were a baby, your world line stayed relatively close to one location, your home, perhaps. As you grew and traveled, it looped and curved through space. Every step you've ever taken, every journey, every moment of stillness, all of it recorded in the geometry of your world line. The world line doesn't stop at the present. If the block universe is true, it continues forward, already complete, tracing every movement you'll make for the rest of your life, ending at the specific point in space-time where you'll die. Your entire biography, from first breath to last, exists as a single 4-dimensional object, a thread woven through the fabric of space-time. Now consider the moments of decision in your life. You chose to take a particular job, to move to a new city, to start or end a relationship. In the conventional view, these choices created your future, determining which paths you'd take through time. But in the block universe, your world line already includes all your choices and their consequences. The decision you'll make tomorrow is already part of your world line's geometry, just as surely as the decision you made yesterday. This doesn't necessarily mean your choices are meaningless. The world line is shaped the way it is because of your decisions. Causation still flows along the line. Who you are now influences who you'll be tomorrow, even though both you now and you tomorrow exist simultaneously in the block. It's similar to how the final chapters of a novel follow from the earlier ones, even though all chapters exist together in the bound book. But there's something haunting about visualizing yourself this way, as a fixed geometric object in space-time rather than a being navigating an open future. It challenges our deepest intuitions about autonomy and possibility. If your world line is already complete, extending from birth to death, then in some sense your life has already happened, is always happening, is eternally inscribed in reality's structure. At every point along your world line, consciousness exists, experiencing that moment as present. The you now is one such point of consciousness. The you yesterday is another, earlier point, still existing in their moment. The you tomorrow is another point, further along the curve, already experiencing what for you is still future. Countless yous, all real, all present in their own slices, all connected by the continuous thread of your world line. Perhaps the strangest implication is this: your world line intersects with other world lines, the geometric shapes representing other people's lives. Every conversation you've had is a place where world lines come close, interact and separate. Every relationship is a braiding of two world lines, intertwining for a time. Every goodbye is simply world lines diverging in different directions through space-time, though both continue existing in their respective paths. You are, in this view, not a thing but a shape, not a moment but a structure, not a presence but a pattern written permanently into the architecture of everything that is. Let's turn our attention forward now, toward what we usually call the future. Think about tomorrow, the next full day you'll experience. You probably have some plans, some expectations. Maybe you'll go to work, or meet with friends, or simply continue whatever routines structure your days. Tomorrow feels uncertain, doesn't it? Not yet real, not yet determined, waiting to unfold based on choices you haven't made yet. But if the block universe is true, tomorrow is already there, not approaching, not being created, already existing, as real and present as this moment you're experiencing now. The you who will wake up tomorrow morning is experiencing that awakening right now, in their slice of space-time. They're brushing their teeth, perhaps, or making coffee, or looking out the window at the early light. To them, it's not the future, it's the present, and they have no knowledge of you, now reading these words tonight, any more than you now knows exactly what you tomorrow is doing. This creates a peculiar relationship between your current self and your future self. You tomorrow exists right now, but they exist in a different temporal location. You can't communicate with them directly any more than you can communicate with someone on the other side of a spatial barrier. But you are them, in a sense. Your consciousness will become their consciousness, or rather, consciousness will move from your point on the world line to theirs, creating the subjective experience of time passing. Consider what you tomorrow knows that you now don't. They've already experienced the intervening time. Questions that are uncertain to you. Will I sleep well tonight? What will I dream about? Are answered facts to them. The future, from their perspective, is past. They remember living through what for you is still ahead. And yet, in the block universe, both of you exist simultaneously. One of you wondering, one of you remembering, both equally real in your respective moments. This symmetry between past and future is one of the block universe's most striking implications. We think of the past as fixed and the future as open, but if both exist equally in the four-dimensional structure, that distinction dissolves. Your future is as determined as your past, not determined by fate or destiny in some mystical sense, but simply already existing in the block. The choices you'll make are already made, already part of reality's structure, even though you haven't experienced making them yet. Some find this thought liberating. Whatever anxieties you have about the future, whatever uncertainties keep you awake at night, in a sense they're already resolved. Future you already knows how things turn out. The story is already written. This can feel like a strange kind of permission to relax, to trust that whatever happens is already woven into the fabric of existence. Others find it troubling. If tomorrow already exists, if your future self is already there living through events you haven't reached yet, what role do your current choices play? Why deliberate? Why plan? Why worry about doing the right thing if it's all already fixed? The philosophical problem of free will, already difficult, becomes even more acute when we imagine our future selves existing now. already living through the consequences of decisions we haven't made yet. Perhaps the answer lies in recognizing that from your current perspective, the future remains unknown even if it exists. You tomorrow knows what happens, but you now doesn't. The uncertainty is real for you, in your moment, even if from a God's eye view outside time, everything is laid out and determined. The experience of choice, of possibility, of an open future that remains genuine from your perspective, your slice of space-time, and maybe that's enough. Maybe meaning doesn't require an objectively open future. Maybe it only requires the subjective experience of possibility, of agency, of mattering. Your tomorrow self exists, yes, but you still have to become them. Think of someone you love, a friend, a family member, a partner. Think of a specific conversation you had with them, perhaps years ago. Maybe it was meaningful, or maybe it was ordinary, one of countless exchanges that make up a relationship. In the conventional view, that conversation is gone. It happened once, in the past, and now it exists only as memory in your mind and theirs. But in the block universe, that conversation is still happening. Right now, in its particular location in space-time, those words are being spoken, those thoughts exchanged. The version of you sitting across from your loved one, laughing or arguing, or simply sharing silence, that version exists, eternal and unchanging. And the version of them exists too, in that same moment, their consciousness experiencing that conversation as their present. Every conversation you've ever had exists this way, simultaneously, eternally present in the four-dimensional structure. Every hello and every goodbye, every confession and every lie, every moment of connection and every misunderstanding, they're all still happening, frozen in their respective slices of space-time, the words hanging in the air forever, being spoken and heard over and over, or rather, once and eternally, which might be the same thing. This has particularly poignant implications for those we've lost. When someone dies, we experience their absence acutely. They're gone from our present, from the moments we're currently experiencing. But in the block universe, they're not gone absolutely. Every moment they lived still exists. Every conversation you shared with them is still occurring in its temporal location. The child talking with their grandmother, the friend sharing coffee with their companion, the lover whispering in the dark, all of these moments persist. From a certain perspective, death doesn't erase someone from existence. It simply marks the end of their world line. The complete geometric shape of their life exists in space-time, beginning at birth and ending at death, but all of it equally real, equally present. The dead are not nowhere, they're in the past regions of the block, still living their moments, still experiencing their joys and sorrows, forever. This might seem like cold comfort. After all, you can't access those past moments. You can't return to the times when your loved one was alive, can't have new conversations with them. Your world line has moved beyond the region where it intersected with theirs. From your current temporal location, they are indeed gone. The separation is real and painful, and yet there's something profound in the thought that nothing is truly lost. Every embrace, every shared meal, every moment of understanding between you and those you love, these aren't merely memories gradually fading in minds that will themselves eventually cease. They're permanent features of reality, written into the eternal structure of space-time. In this sense, love itself might be a geometric fact, the intertwining of world lines, the pattern of two or more paths through space-time that come together, influence each other, and create something that exists forever. Consider also the conversations you haven't had yet, with people currently in your life. If the block universe is true, those future conversations already exist. The words you'll speak to your friend next week, the argument you'll have with your partner next month, the reconciliation that might follow, all of these are already there, already frozen in the structure. Both of you will speak words that are, in a sense, already spoken. Does this make conversations less meaningful? Or does it perhaps make them more so, every word eternally inscribed, every connection permanently preserved? These are questions without clear answers, invitations to wonder rather than conclusions to accept. So far, we've been exploring the block universe as a single structure containing all actual moments of history. But there's another layer of strangeness we can add, one that emerges when we combine the block universe with quantum mechanics. It's called the many worlds interpretation, and it suggests that perhaps there isn't just one block universe, There might be countless parallel blocks, each containing a different version of history. In quantum mechanics, certain events seem genuinely probabilistic. An electron can be in a superposition of states, seemingly in multiple conditions simultaneously until measured. The standard interpretation says that measurement collapses the superposition, randomly selecting one outcome, but the many worlds interpretation proposed by physicist Hugh Everett offers a different view. All outcomes occur, each in a different branch of reality. If we combine this with the block universe, we get a stunning picture, a branching structure where every quantum possibility creates a new four-dimensional block. Every time a particle could go left or right, both happen in separate blocks. Every decision you make, every coin flip, every moment of uncertainty, reality splits, creating parallel blocks containing all possible outcomes. This means there might be versions of you in parallel blocks who made different choices. The you who took the other job, who moved to the other city, who said yes instead of no, or no instead of yes. Each of these yous exists in their own block universe, their own complete four-dimensional structure, living out a different version of your life. It's a dizzying multiplication of existence. Not only does every moment of your actual life exist eternally in one block universe, but every moment of every possible version of your life might exist eternally in countless parallel blocks. The totality of you becomes inconceivably vast. Every path you could have taken, every person you might have been, all existing simultaneously in the greater multiverse of block universes. Some find this idea comforting. Every regret about a choice you made might be balanced by a version of you who made the opposite choice. Missed opportunities in this block might be seized opportunities in another. Every version of you that could exist does exist, somewhere in the branching structure. Others find it existentially overwhelming. If every possibility exists, does anything matter? Does your particular path through space-time have significance if countless other yous are taking countless other paths? The uniqueness of your experience seems to dissolve in the infinite multiplication of alternatives, but perhaps the question itself is misguided. Even if countless versions of you exist in parallel blocks, you are this version, experiencing this particular world line. Your joys and sorrows are real in your block, meaningful to the consciousness tracing this specific path through space-time. The existence of alternatives doesn't diminish the reality of your actual experience. Moreover, there's beauty in the thought that every possibility finds expression somewhere in the multiverse. Nothing that could happen is merely potential. It all becomes actual in some branch, some block. The universe, in this view, doesn't choose between possibilities. It contains them all. Reality is not selective, but infinitely inclusive. Of course, the many worlds interpretation remains controversial, and its combination with the block universe even more speculative. We're venturing now into territory where science blends with philosophy and imagination, but that's where we find some of the deepest wonder, in the space between what we know and what we can barely conceive. We've explored the block universe from multiple angles, turned it in different lights, considered its implications for your past, future, and alternative possibilities. Now let's sit with the emotional and philosophical weight of what all this might mean. If every moment of your life exists eternally in the four-dimensional structure of space-time, what does that do to your relationship with your own experience? Consider first the moments of joy and beauty in your life, times when you felt deeply happy, connected, alive, a perfect sunset perhaps, or the feeling of accomplishment after achieving something difficult, or moments of intimacy with someone you love. In the conventional view, these moments are precious partly because they're fleeting. They happened once, and now they're gone, existing only as memories that themselves will eventually fade. But in the block universe, these moments never end. They exist forever, eternally present in their location in space-time. The you experiencing that perfect sunset is always there, always feeling that beauty, always watching the light change. It's permanently inscribed in reality. There's a profound comfort in this. Nothing beautiful is ever truly lost. Every moment of grace in your life is preserved forever in the architecture of existence. Now consider the painful moments, times of loss, fear, suffering, or despair. Moments you'd rather forget, experiences you've worked hard to move beyond. In the conventional view, these too are gone, and time's passage has brought you to a better place. You've grown, healed, moved on. The painful past is behind you. But in the block universe, those moments also exist eternally. The you who suffered is still suffering, frozen forever in that moment of pain. They can't heal or move on because they simply exist there, perpetually experiencing what they're experiencing. Every difficult moment of your life is happening right now somewhere in the four-dimensional block, and will continue happening forever. This is perhaps the most troubling implication of the block universe. We find meaning in the idea that time heals, that we can leave the past behind, that suffering is temporary. But if the past exists eternally, if time doesn't actually flow, then suffering isn't temporary at all. It's permanent, inscribed forever in its slice of space-time. Yet maybe there's another way to think about this. Yes, the you in pain exists eternally in their moment, but so does the you who has moved beyond that pain. Both are real, both permanent, both part of the complete structure of your world line. The suffering isn't erased, but neither does it define the totality of who you are. Your world line includes both the pain and the healing, both the wound and the growth that followed. Moreover, from the perspective of the you experiencing pain, the future where things are better already exists. They can't see it yet, but it's there. Further along the world line, their suffering has a context, a place in a larger story that includes resolution and peace. The pain is real and eternal, but so is what comes after. This leads to a strange kind of acceptance. If all moments exist eternally, then perhaps the goal isn't to eliminate painful moments. They'll always be there in their location, but to ensure that the total structure of your world line includes beauty, meaning, and connection, alongside the inevitable suffering. You're creating a pattern in space-time, and while you can't remove the darker threads, you can weave in lighter ones. In the end, the block universe doesn't resolve the fundamental challenges of existence. Pain remains painful, loss remains loss, joy remains precious, but it offers a different frame for thinking about these experiences, as permanent features of a four-dimensional structure rather than temporary states in a flowing river. Whether that frame brings comfort or unease might depend on your temperament, your experiences, your particular path through the eternal now. We've been exploring the block universe largely through thought experiments and metaphors. Now let's look more carefully at the scientific foundation beneath these ideas. What exactly does Einstein's theory of relativity tell us about the nature of time? The answer is both more subtle and more radical than popular accounts often suggest. The key insight, as we touched on earlier, is the relativity of simultaneity. In Newtonian physics, time was absolute. If two events happened at the same time, they were simultaneous for everyone. Everywhere in the universe, there was a universal now slicing through reality, shared by all observers. Einstein showed that this is wrong. Here's a thought experiment that illustrates the point. Imagine a train moving past a platform at high speed. Lightning strikes both ends of the train simultaneously, from the perspective of someone standing on the platform, but someone sitting in the middle of the train sees something different. Because they're moving, the light from the strike at the front of the train reaches them before the light from the strike at the back. From their perspective, the front strike happened first. Same events, two different answers to the question which happened first. Both observers are correct. There's no privileged frame of reference that gives the real order of events. Simultaneity is relative. It depends on your state of motion. What this means is that the present moment isn't universal. Your now and someone else's now can be different slices through space-time if you're in relative motion. The implications are staggering. If simultaneity is relative, if different observers can disagree about what exists right now, then perhaps all moments must exist equally. After all, an event that's in the future for one observer might be in the present for another observer, and in the past for yet another, depending on their relative motions. The only way to make sense of this is to say that all moments, past, present, and future, are equally real. They must all exist in order for different observers' nows to be different slices through the same reality. Physicist Brian Greene illustrates this with an elegant example. Imagine an alien on a planet 10 billion light-years away. If that alien is at rest relative to you, their now, their present moment, includes what's happening on Earth right now. But if they start moving toward Earth, even at a gentle velocity their now tilts, it might suddenly include what we think of as Earth's past, perhaps a century ago. If they move away from Earth, their now tilts the other direction, including what we think of as Earth's future, perhaps a century hence. Nothing has changed except the aliens' motion, yet their present moment shifts by centuries in Earth's timeline. This seems impossible unless both the past and future exist right now, as real as the present. The aliens' changing motion is simply changing which slice of the eternal block they consider now. This is deeply counterintuitive, perhaps impossible to fully visualize. Our minds evolved to navigate three-dimensional space, not to grasp four-dimensional space-time. But the mathematics is clear, the experimental evidence overwhelming. Relativity has been tested countless times and never found wanting. Time really does behave this way. The block universe isn't certain. There are alternative interpretations we'll explore, but it's not wild speculation either. It's a serious attempt to make sense of what our best physics tells us about time's nature. And what it tells us is strange beyond imagining. One of relativity's most famous thought experiments can help us understand how the block universe accommodates different experiences of time. It's called the twin paradox, and while it's often presented as a paradox, it's really just a vivid illustration of how time works in Einstein's universe. It also reveals something beautiful about how different paths through space-time can have different lengths, yet all exist fully in the eternal structure. Imagine twins, Alice and Bob. Alice stays on Earth while Bob boards a spacecraft and travels to a distant star at near light speed, then returns. When Bob arrives back on Earth, he finds that he's aged only a few years, while Alice has aged decades. This isn't science fiction, it's a real consequence of special relativity, confirmed by experiments with atomic clocks on airplanes and satellites. Time genuinely passes more slowly for objects moving at high speeds. The apparent paradox is this. From Bob's perspective, isn't Alice the one who's moving? Shouldn't Alice be the one who ages slowly? The resolution involves understanding that the situation isn't symmetric. Bob accelerates to turn around, breaking the symmetry. But our interest isn't in resolving the paradox, but in understanding what it reveals about the block universe. In the four-dimensional block, both Alice and Bob have world lines, paths through space-time. Alice's world line is relatively straight, staying in one place in space and progressing steadily through time. Bob's world line curves outward and back, taking a longer path through space, but a shorter path through time. Both world lines exist completely in the block, from beginning to end. Here's what's remarkable. The world lines have different lengths when measured in the appropriate way. In space-time, you measure the length of a world line by the amount of time experienced along it, what physicists call proper time. Alice's world line has a longer proper time, so she ages more. Bob's world line has a shorter proper time, so he ages less. Both are equally real, equally existent in the block, but they represent different quantities of experience time. This shows something profound about the block universe. It's not rigid in the way a three-dimensional block would be. Different paths through the four-dimensional structure correspond to different amounts of experience time. Your world line isn't just your path through the universe. It's also a measure of how much time you experience, how much you age, how many heartbeats comprise your life. Now imagine the moment when Bob returns and reunites with his aged twin. Both twins exist in that moment. It's a point where their world lines intersect, but they've travelled different paths through space-time to reach it. Alice took the long route through time, experiencing decades. Bob took a shortcut, experiencing only years. Yet both paths exist completely, eternally, in the block. From Alice's perspective along her world line, she waited decades for Bob to return, decades during which Bob was travelling through space. From Bob's perspective along his world line, only a few years passed. Both perspectives are correct. Both world lines are real. The block contains both of them, complete and eternal. This also means that every moment of Bob's journey exists eternally, from his departure as a young man to his return still relatively young, and every moment of Alice's wait exists eternally too, from youth through middle age. The different rates at which they aged don't contradict the block universe. They're simply features of the different paths through space-time that the block contains. There's something both beautiful and melancholic about this. Every path through space-time is permanent, but paths aren't all equal. Some involve more experienced time than others. Bob's choice to travel meant choosing a shorter path through time itself. Fewer years of experience, fewer memories made, less total life lived, even though every moment he did experience exists eternally. The block universe preserves all paths equally, but the paths themselves contain different quantities of existence. Einstein's special relativity revealed that time is relative and intertwined with space in a four-dimensional structure, but his general relativity, published a decade later, showed something even more profound, that space-time itself isn't a fixed stage on which events play out, but a dynamic entity that can bend, curve, and warp in response to matter and energy. This curvature of space-time is what we experience as gravity. Imagine a trampoline pull taut. If you place a bowling ball in the center, it creates a depression, curving the trampoline's surface. Smaller objects placed nearby will roll toward the bowling ball, not because of some mysterious force pulling them, but simply because they're following the curved surface. This is analogous to how mass curves space-time. The Earth doesn't pull you down through some mysterious force acting at a distance. Rather, Earth's mass curves space-time in its vicinity, and you're simply following the curves. But here's what matters for our exploration. When space-time curves, time itself curves. Near massive objects, time passes more slowly than it does far from massive objects. This has been measured with extraordinary precision. Atomic clocks at different altitudes tick at measurably different rates. A clock on the ground runs slower than a clock on a mountaintop, because the ground is deeper in Earth's gravitational well, deeper in the curvature of space-time. GPS satellites must account for this time dilation to function correctly. They orbit high above Earth, where time runs faster than it does on the surface. Without correcting for this difference, GPS coordinates would drift off by meters each day. Every time you use a navigation app, you're relying on the reality of curved space-time and differential time flow. Now, what does this mean for the block universe? It means the block itself isn't flat or regular. Different regions experience time at different rates, but all of it exists together in the four-dimensional structure. Near a massive star, time flows slowly. Far from stars in empty space, time flows quickly. But both regions exist simultaneously in the block. Think of it this way. If space-time were a loaf of bread, it wouldn't be a uniform loaf with parallel slices. It would be a lumpy, irregular loaf where the slices vary in thickness and orientation. Where there's mass, the structure compresses and time dilates. Where space is empty, the structure is more relaxed and time flows more quickly. But the entire lumpy, irregular loaf exists as a complete four-dimensional object. This curvature can become extreme. Near a black hole, space-time curves so severely that time nearly stops from the perspective of a distant observer. An object falling toward a black hole appears to slow down, taking an eternity to cross the event horizon. Yet from the falling object's perspective, time passes normally, and the horizon is crossed in finite time. Both perspectives are correct. They're simply different paths through the wildly curved space-time near the black hole, both existing in the block. Perhaps most remarkably, general relativity permits solutions where space-time curves so severely that it loops back on itself, creating what are called closed time-like curves, paths through space-time that return to their starting point in time. These are theoretical time loops, and whether they exist in our universe remains unclear, but their very possibility in the mathematics shows how flexible space-time can be, how far removed from our intuitive notion of time flowing uniformly everywhere. The block universe, viewed through general relativity, is a complex four-dimensional manifold, curved, warped, dynamic in its structure, even while being eternal and unchanging. Time doesn't flow, but it doesn't need to. The curvature itself creates all the phenomena we observe, from falling apples to orbiting planets to aging astronauts. All of it frozen, all of it eternal, all of it written into the geometry of the block. Black holes represent the most extreme curvature of space-time our universe permits, or at least the most extreme we've discovered. They're formed when massive stars collapse, compressing so much mass into so small a space that space-time curves beyond a critical point, creating a region from which not even light can escape. And they reveal something extraordinary about the relationship between space and time in the block universe. Approach a black hole, and you enter a realm where our ordinary intuitions about space and time completely fail. Far from the black hole, space-time is relatively flat. Time flows normally, space behaves as we expect. But as you move closer, the curvature intensifies. Time slows relative to distant observers. Space becomes stretched. The normal rules bend. Cross the event horizon, the boundary of the black hole, and something remarkable happens. Space and time swap roles. Outside the horizon, you can move freely through space, left, right, forward, back, but are carried inexorably forward through time. Inside the horizon, you can move freely through time in principle, at least, but are carried inexorably inward through space, toward the singularity at the center. The direction that was temporal becomes spatial, and the direction that was spatial becomes temporal. What does this mean in terms of the block universe? It means that the block structure near black holes is profoundly strange. The slices of time that seemed so clear elsewhere become ambiguous, twisted. The path from outside to inside the event horizon represents a journey where the very nature of dimensions transforms. From the perspective of someone falling into a black hole, the journey is straightforward. You approach, you cross the horizon, you fall toward the singularity. Depending on the black hole's size, you might experience tidal forces your feet pulled harder than your head, but the journey is finite and brief from your perspective. Your world line enters the black hole and ends at the singularity in a measurable amount of proper time. But from the perspective of someone watching from far away, something different happens. As the falling observer approaches the event horizon, they appear to slow down, their image reddening as light gets stretched to longer wavelengths. They appear to take forever to reach the horizon, their image freezing just at the boundary, never quite crossing. This isn't an illusion. It's a genuine consequence of extreme time dilation near the horizon. In the block universe, both perspectives are accommodated. The complete structure contains both the falling observer's world line, which crosses the horizon and reaches the singularity, and the distant observer's world line, from which the falling observer never quite seems to cross. These aren't contradictory. They're different paths through the same curved spacetime, seeing different aspects of the same eternal geometry. Black holes also raise profound questions about the block universe's limits. At the singularity, the point at the center where density becomes infinite and spacetime curvature becomes infinite, our current physics breaks down. General relativity predicts that the singularity exists, but also that its own equations become meaningless there. We can't describe what happens at that point, because our understanding fails. Does this mean the block universe has holes in it, places where the structure simply ends? Or does quantum gravity, a theory we don't yet have, smooth out the singularity, completing the block structure in ways we can't currently calculate? These are open questions at the frontier of physics. What we can say is this: black holes demonstrate that the block universe, if it exists, is far stranger than a simple four-dimensional crystal. It's a structure where time and space can exchange roles, where curvature becomes so extreme that our very concepts strain to encompass it, where the architecture of reality reveals its deepest mysteries. And yet, throughout all this strangeness, the fundamental picture holds: a complete four-dimensional structure, eternal and unchanging, containing all of space and all of time. There's a profound shift in thinking that comes with taking the block universe seriously, and it concerns the very notion of how the universe works. In our everyday intuition, and in many depictions of physics, we imagine the universe computing the next moment, based on the current moment. The laws of physics are like rules or algorithms, taking the present state as input and producing the future state as output. Time flows, and the universe continuously calculates what comes next. But the block universe suggests something radically different. The universe doesn't calculate anything. It doesn't produce the future from the present, because the future isn't being produced. It already exists, along with the present and the past, in a complete four-dimensional structure. The laws of physics aren't rules for generating subsequent moments. They're descriptions of the patterns and relationships that exist within the eternal block. Think of it this way. Consider a mathematical equation like a circle, defined by x quadrate block quadrate. The circle doesn't calculate its points. Each point on the circle simply is, satisfying the equation. The circle exists as a complete geometric object, and the equation describes the relationship among its points. Similarly, the block universe exists as a complete four-dimensional object, and the laws of physics describe the relationships among events within it. This perspective dissolves certain paradoxes and puzzles. For instance, we sometimes wonder, how does a particle know what path to take? How does the universe compute complex quantum probabilities? How do fields propagate through space? But these questions assume a computational model, the universe figuring things out as it goes. In the block universe, there's no figuring out. The particle's path, the probability amplitudes, the field configurations all simply exist, components of a static structure that satisfies certain mathematical relationships. It's like asking how a mountain knows to be the shape it is. The mountain doesn't know anything. It doesn't calculate its shape. Its shape is simply the result of all the physical processes that formed it, all existing together in the final structure. Similarly, an electron's world line through spacetime doesn't result from the electron calculating where to go. It's simply part of the eternal structure that satisfies the equations of quantum mechanics and relativity. This view has interesting implications for causation. We usually think of causes preceding effects in time. A happens, which causes B to happen later. But in the block universe, A and B both simply exist, with a particular geometric relationship. The relationship is what we call causation. A is in the past light cone of B, connected by a time-like path, and the configuration of events satisfies the physical laws. That's all causation is, a pattern in the eternal structure, not a process of generation. Some find this perspective strangely peaceful. The universe isn't struggling to compute itself, isn't working to generate each moment from the previous one. It simply is, complete and whole, a finished sculpture in 4 dimensions. All the complexity we observe, galaxies spinning, life evolving, consciousness experiencing, isn't being produced. It's simply the pattern that exists, eternally inscribed in the geometry. Others find it disconcerting. It seems to remove agency and dynamics from reality, making everything static and predetermined. If the universe doesn't calculate, doesn't produce the future, doesn't evolve, what are we? What is experience? What is the point of anything if it's all just frozen structure? But perhaps this is a false dichotomy. The structure contains dynamics, not as change within the structure, but as patterns in the structure. Your life isn't static in the sense of being unchanging. Rather, your world line represents change, growth, motion, experience, all of these encoded in the geometry of your path through spacetime. The block is frozen, but what's frozen within it includes all the motion, all the life, all the becoming that exists. It's a shift from thinking of time as a dimension of change to thinking of change as a pattern in time. The universe doesn't calculate the next frame of reality because there are no frames, no next. There's only the complete film, all frames existing together, telling a story that appears to unfold when you watch it sequence by sequence, but in truth exists whole and entire forever. We've spent considerable time exploring the block universe, turning it in different lights, examining its implications, but it's important to acknowledge that not all physicists and philosophers accept this view. There are alternatives, different ways of interpreting what relativity tells us about time, different frameworks for understanding the relationship between past, present, and future. One of the most interesting is called the growing block universe. The growing block theory accepts that the past is real and fixed, much like the standard block universe. Everything that has happened exists, unchangeably, in the structure of spacetime. But unlike the full block universe, the growing block theory denies that the future exists. The future, in this view, is genuinely open, not yet real, not yet part of the structure of reality. Imagine reality as a tree growing upward through time. The trunk and the branches that have already grown are fixed, solid, real. They represent the past. The very topmost layer of the tree, the boundary where growth is occurring, represents the present. Beyond that, the branches and leaves that will grow tomorrow, these don't yet exist. They're genuinely future, genuinely unreal, until the tree grows to include them. In this framework, reality is constantly gaining new moments. Each instant, the present advances, adding a new layer to the growing block. The past accumulates, becoming richer, more extensive, but the future remains non-existent until it becomes present and then immediately becomes past. Time genuinely flows in the sense that reality is genuinely growing, genuinely becoming more extensive. This preserves something that the full block universe seems to sacrifice, the idea of becoming, of genuine novelty entering the world. In the full block, nothing becomes, it all simply is. But in the growing block, each moment is genuinely new when it arrives, an addition to reality that wasn't there before. This feels closer to our intuitive experience. The future doesn't feel real the way the past does. We remember the past but not the future. The past seems fixed while the future seems open. The growing block also preserves a more intuitive notion of free will and agency. If the future doesn't yet exist, then it's genuinely up to you, genuinely undetermined. Your choices tomorrow aren't already real. They'll become real when you make them, adding their consequences to the growing structure of reality. You're not simply discovering a path that already exists, but genuinely creating new branches on the growing block. However, the growing block faces challenges. One difficulty is reconciling it with relativity. If simultaneity is relative, if different observers disagree about what's happening now, then what does it mean for the present to be a unique advancing boundary? Your now and my now might be different slices through spacetime if we're in relative motion. How can reality be growing along multiple different boundaries simultaneously? Some growing block theorists argue that there is a privileged frame of reference after all, perhaps defined by the cosmic microwave background or the overall expansion of the universe. In this frame, there's a genuine universal present, a cosmic now along which reality grows. Other reference frames experience time differently, but there's still an objective present moment in the universe's preferred frame. This solution works mathematically, but it requires giving up one of relativity's most profound insights, that no reference frame is privileged, that motion is always relative. It reintroduces a kind of absolute time, not exactly Newtonian, but still special in a way that seems at odds with Einstein's vision. Another challenge concerns the nature of the present itself. If the present is a boundary between real past and unreal future, how thick is it? Is it an infinitesimally thin slice, an instantaneous boundary? But then how does change occur? How does one moment give rise to the next? Or does the present have some duration, some thickness, but then different parts of the present would be at different times, which seems contradictory? Despite these difficulties, the growing block remains an active area of philosophical research. It attempts to preserve intuitions about time that many find compelling, that the past is fixed, the future open, that time genuinely flows, that becoming is real. Whether it can be reconciled with modern physics remains an open question, a testament to how deep and unsettled our understanding of time truly is. If there's any place in modern physics where the future seems genuinely open, genuinely undetermined, it's in the strange realm of quantum mechanics. Quantum theory introduces fundamental randomness into the heart of physical law, suggesting that certain events don't have determined outcomes until they actually occur. This apparent indeterminacy poses a serious challenge to the block universe's eternal frozen structure. Consider a simple quantum experiment, a single photon approaching a half-silvered mirror. Classical physics would predict a definite outcome. The photon either passes through or reflects, based on its properties and the mirror's characteristics. But quantum mechanics says something stranger. Before measurement, the photon exists in a superposition of both possibilities. It's not that we don't know which happened, rather both possibilities are somehow simultaneously real until an observation occurs. When you measure which path the photon took, the superposition collapses to a single outcome. The photon is found either transmitted or reflected, with a 50-50 probability. But here's the crucial point. Quantum mechanics provides no way to predict which outcome will occur. The randomness is fundamental, not merely a reflection of our ignorance. The universe itself doesn't know, until the moment of measurement, which outcome will be realized. How does this fit with the block universe? If the block is complete and eternal, containing all moments including future ones, then the photon's path must already be determined. Whether it transmits or reflects is already fixed in the block structure, but quantum mechanics says it's not fixed until measurement occurs. These seem incompatible. One response is to say that quantum randomness is just apparent, that there are hidden variables we haven't discovered that actually determine outcomes. If we knew these hidden variables, we could predict the photon's behavior deterministically. In this view, quantum randomness is like classical randomness. A coin flip seems random only because we can't track all the forces and initial conditions that determine how it lands. The block universe could accommodate this. The hidden variables are simply part of the block's structure, but experiments seem to rule out most hidden variable theories. Bell's theorem and subsequent tests show that quantum correlations can't be explained by local hidden variables, unknown factors determining outcomes in advance. Either the correlations are genuinely random, or they involve non-local influences faster than light. Either way, our classical intuitions fail. Another response involves the many worlds interpretation we touched on earlier. In this view, all quantum outcomes actually occur, each in a different branch of reality. The photon both transmits and reflects in different worlds. If we combine this with the block universe, we get a branching structure where each possibility is realized in its own four-dimensional block. The multiverse is deterministic, all branches exist eternally, but each individual world experiences apparent randomness. You don't know which branch you're in until observation. A third response is more radical. Perhaps the block universe is wrong, at least in its full form. Perhaps quantum mechanics is telling us that the future genuinely doesn't exist until it's created by quantum measurements. Reality might be something like the growing block, with the present advancing moment by moment as quantum superpositions collapse, determining which branch of possibility becomes real. This view takes quantum measurement seriously as a physical process that creates reality, rather than merely revealing it. Each measurement adds a new layer to the growing block, selecting from among quantum possibilities and making one of them actual. The future is genuinely open because it hasn't been measured yet, hasn't collapsed from superposition into definite existence. The tension between quantum mechanics and the block universe remains unresolved. We don't yet have a complete theory that fully reconciles quantum mechanics with general relativity, the two pillars of modern physics. When we do, if we do, we may find that both theories require modification, that our understanding of time needs revision at the deepest level. Perhaps time does flow, in some quantum sense. Perhaps the block universe needs growing edges where quantum indeterminacy creates new reality, or perhaps quantum randomness is itself an illusion, and everything is eternally determined in ways we can't yet see. Even if we grant that the block universe is consistent with physics, we face a profound philosophical puzzle, the problem of consciousness and the present moment. This is sometimes called the hard problem of now, analogous to the famous hard problem of consciousness. The question is simple to state but seemingly impossible to answer. If all moments exist equally in the eternal block, why do we experience one particular moment as uniquely present? Right now, as you rest here attending to these words, you have a vivid sense of nowness. This moment feels special, real, present in a way that past and future moments don't. You remember the past, you anticipate the future, but you experience only this moment. The present has a qualitative character, a felt immediacy that distinguishes it absolutely from other times. But in the block universe, there's nothing special about this moment. It's just one slice among countless others, no more real or present than any other. Your 5-year-old self has the exact same sense of nowness in their moment, experiencing their present as uniquely real. Your future self will have the same sensation tomorrow, feeling that moment as the present. Every moment along your world line comes with this sense of nowness, this feeling of being the special, uniquely real present. So why does it feel, right now, like this moment is the present? If all moments have equal reality, and each comes with its own sense of presentness, why aren't you experiencing all of them simultaneously? Why does it feel like time flows, like you're moving through the block from one moment to the next? One answer is that the feeling of flow is an illusion created by memory. You remember past moments, and this creates the sensation of having moved through them to reach the present. Similarly, you don't remember future moments, creating the feeling that they haven't happened yet. But memory itself is just a pattern in the block, configurations of neurons that encode information about other moments. Why should one moment's memories of other moments create the feeling of flow? Another answer suggests that consciousness is inherently temporal in a way that physics isn't. Perhaps consciousness can only exist as a process, a flow. Even if that flow occurs within a frozen structure, your subjective experience might require comparison between moments, integration of past with present, anticipation of future. The block might be static, but consciousness within it might necessarily feel dynamic. This leads to strange implications. If consciousness requires flow, but the block is frozen, then perhaps consciousness somehow spans multiple moments, existing as a four-dimensional structure itself. You aren't a point of consciousness moving through time, you're a stream of consciousness existing across time, with each moment aware only of its local neighborhood. The sense of flow emerges from the structure of this four-dimensional stream, but this doesn't really solve the problem. Even if consciousness is four-dimensional, Each moment of consciousness still feels like the unique present. The you now still wonders why you're experiencing this moment and not some other. The hard problem of now remains. Why this moment? Some philosophers suggest there is no answer, that the question is somehow malformed. Perhaps asking why this moment is like asking why this place, when all places exist equally. You have to be somewhere, so you're here. Similarly, each moment of consciousness experiences itself as present because it exists, and experiencing yourself as present is just what it means to be a moment of consciousness. Others argue that the hard problem of now is evidence against the block universe, the vivid reality of the present. The undeniable sense that this moment is privileged might be telling us something important about time's nature. Perhaps the present really is special. Perhaps time genuinely flows, and our subjective experience is accurately tracking an objective feature of reality, rather than being deceived by a frozen structure. This debate touches the limits of what science can address. Physics can describe the objective structure of space-time, but consciousness and subjective experience seem to involve something more, something that current physics doesn't capture. Whether the hard problem of now undermines the block universe, or simply reveals the limits of our understanding, remains deeply uncertain. One of the most persistent worries about the block universe concerns causation and agency. We're accustomed to thinking of causes as bringing about effects, of events at one time influencing events at later times. We make choices, and those choices cause consequences. This seems essential to meaningful action, to responsibility, to the very notion of agency. But how can any of this work if the future already exists, frozen in the block? Consider a simple example. You decide to raise your hand. That decision causes your hand to rise. The decision is the cause, the rising hand is the effect. In the normal view, your decision brings about the hand raising, makes it happen. But in the block universe, both your decision and your hand rising already exist, complete and unchangeable in the four-dimensional structure. The decision doesn't make the hand rise, both simply are, simultaneous components of the eternal block. Does this mean causation is illusory? That your decisions don't actually cause anything because everything is already fixed? Many worry that the block universe undermines the very idea of causation, reducing it to mere correlation. Events don't cause other events. They simply coexist in patterns we call causal. One response is to embrace a counterfactual theory of causation. A causes B, if in the closest possible world where A doesn't occur, B also doesn't occur. Your decision causes your hand to rise because in the nearest alternative block universe, where you didn't decide to raise your hand doesn't rise. Causation becomes a relationship between actual events and events in alternative possible blocks, not a process of bringing about within a single block. This preserves a notion of causation, but it's admittedly strange. It makes causation depend on hypothetical alternatives rather than actual processes, and it raises questions about which alternative blocks we should consider, which are closest to the actual one. The theory has technical sophistication, but perhaps lacks the intuitive clarity we want from an account of cause and effect. Another approach focuses on the structure within the block. Even though all events exist eternally, they exist in a particular structure with particular relationships. Your decision and your hand rising are connected by a time-like world, a continuous path through space-time. The state of your neurons at the decision moment is linked, through the laws of physics, to the state of your muscles at the hand rising moment. This connection is what we call causation. In this view, causation is a pattern in the block, a kind of geometric relationship between events. It's like how one part of a sculpture supports another part. The base of a statue causes the top to stay aloft, not by doing something to it over time, but by the relationship between base and top in the statue's structure. Similarly, earlier events cause later events by their structural relationship in the four-dimensional block. But does this preserve the intuition that our choices matter, that we're genuine agents? If your entire world line exists already, complete from birth to death, then in what sense do you make choices? The choices are already made, already part of the structure. You can't choose otherwise because the block is fixed. Here's a possible reply. You can't choose otherwise from the God's eye perspective outside time, but from within time, from your perspective at the moment of choice, you genuinely deliberate. The openness of the future is subjective, real for you in your moment. Even if objectively, from outside, the future is fixed, and your deliberation is part of what determines the outcome. The block includes your choice-making as a real process, even though that process exists eternally. Think of it like reading a novel. The character's choice is already written on the page, fixed in the text, but the character still chooses based on their deliberation, their values, their reasoning. The fixity of the text doesn't make the character's agency less real within the story. Similarly, the fixity of the block doesn't make your agency less real within your world line. Whether this is satisfying depends on your intuitions. Some find it adequate, agency preserved as a feature of the frozen structure. Others find it insufficient. Genuine freedom requires genuinely open alternatives, possibilities that could actually occur, not merely alternatives in hypothetical blocks or subjective uncertainty about a fixed future. The debate continues, as it has for centuries, adapted now to the strange new context of four-dimensional spacetime. We've been exploring the block universe as a timeless, symmetric structure where past and future have equal reality. But there's an obvious asymmetry in our experience and in the world around us. Time has an arrow. The past is different from the future in ways that seem deep and fundamental. Eggs break but don't unbreak. We remember the past but not the future. Entropy increases. Causes precede effects. How do these asymmetries fit with the supposedly symmetric block universe? The most fundamental asymmetry is thermodynamic. The second law of thermodynamics states that entropy, roughly, disorder or randomness, increases over time in closed systems. A hot cup of coffee left on a table cools to room temperature, never the reverse. Gas released in a room spreads evenly throughout, never spontaneously gathering back in one corner. Broken eggs don't reassemble themselves. The universe moves from order to disorder, from low entropy to high entropy, defining a clear direction for time. This thermodynamic arrow seems to contradict the time symmetry of fundamental physics. The underlying laws, quantum mechanics, relativity, work the same backward and forward in time. If you filmed a single particle's motion and played it backward, the reversed motion would obey the same laws, yet macroscopic phenomena have a clear direction. How can time-symmetric laws produce time-asymmetric behavior? The answer involves statistics and initial conditions. While any individual microscopic process is time-symmetric, the overwhelmingly most probable evolution for a collection of many particles is toward higher entropy. There are vastly more high-entropy states than low-entropy states. If you start a system in a low-entropy configuration, it will almost certainly evolve toward higher entropy, simply because there are more ways to be disordered than ordered. But this just pushes the question back. Why did the universe start in a low-entropy state? The Big Bang appears to have been an extremely low-entropy event, a highly ordered beginning from which the universe has been increasing in entropy ever since. If the block universe is truly eternal and symmetric, why does one end the Big Bang have such low entropy while the other end, the far future, has high entropy? This is called the past hypothesis, the assumption that the universe began in a low entropy state. It's not explained by current physics, it's simply a boundary condition we observe. Some physicists speculate about mechanisms that might explain it, perhaps quantum gravity effects in the early universe, or anthropic selection. We could only exist in a universe with a low entropy past, but we don't have a definitive answer. There's also a psychological arrow of time. We remember the past but not the future. We feel ourselves moving from past toward future, never the reverse. This arrow is closely linked to the thermodynamic arrow. Memory formation requires increasing entropy. Recording information about events increases the overall entropy of the system doing the recording, so our psychological experience of time's direction may be a consequence of the thermodynamic arrow. And there's a cosmological arrow. The universe is expanding, growing larger over time. The direction toward the future is the direction of expansion. Interestingly, this arrow aligns with the thermodynamic arrow, both point in the same direction. Some theories suggest this isn't coincidental, that the expansion somehow explains or is linked to the entropy increase. Do these arrows undermine the block universe? Some argue yes. The deep asymmetry between past and future suggests they have different status. The past is fixed and knowable, the future is open and uncertain. This asymmetry might indicate that the future doesn't exist yet, supporting the growing block over the full block. Others argue that the arrows are compatible with the block universe. The block can have asymmetric structure, low entropy at one end, high at the other, without this implying that one end is more real than the other. A sculpture can be smooth on one side and rough on the other, without the rough side being less existent. Similarly, the block universe can have an entropy gradient, defining an arrow, without the high entropy end being unreal. The mystery remains. Why does time have an arrow when the fundamental laws seem symmetric? The answer might lie in quantum gravity, or in boundary conditions at the Big Bang, or in principles we haven't yet discovered, or perhaps the block universe is wrong, and the asymmetries are telling us something fundamental about time's nature, that it genuinely flows, genuinely distinguishes past from future. This remains one of the deepest open questions in physics. We've journeyed through the physics and philosophy of the block universe, explored its implications and alternatives, confronted its puzzles and paradoxes. Now let's turn to a more personal question. If the block universe is true, how should it change the way we live, the way we think about our experiences, the way we relate to past and future? What does it mean to exist in the eternal present? Consider first how the block universe reshapes our relationship with loss. When someone leaves our life through distance, estrangement, or death, we experience their absence acutely. They're gone from our present, from the moments we're currently experiencing. In the conventional view of time, they're receding further into the past, becoming more distant with each passing day, eventually existing only as fading memories. But in the block universe, they're not receding. Every moment you shared exists eternally, exactly as it was in its location in space-time. The conversation you had last year is still happening, the meal you shared still being eaten, the embrace still warm and present in its temporal coordinates. Your loved one exists there, in those moments, as real and alive as they ever were. This doesn't erase the pain of their absence from your current temporal location. You can't access those past moments. Your world line has moved beyond them. The separation is real, but perhaps there's comfort in knowing that nothing is truly lost, that all moments of connection exist forever in the structure of reality. The past isn't gone, it's simply past, which in the block universe means as real as ever, but at a different temporal coordinate. Similarly, the block universe offers a different perspective on regret. We often torture ourselves over past choices, wishing we could go back and choose differently. If only I had taken that opportunity, said those words, made that different decision. In the conventional view, these regrets concern a past that's gone, opportunities forever lost. But in the block universe, the past can't be changed precisely because it exists eternally. The you who made that choice exists in that moment, making that choice forever. You can't go back because there's nowhere to go. The past isn't a place you left, but a region of space-time where a version of you permanently dwells. Regret becomes a desire to change something unchangeable, to alter a fixed geometric feature of reality. This might seem to make regret worse. You're stuck with your mistakes forever, unable to undo them, but it might also offer a path to acceptance. The past is absolutely fixed, in a deep metaphysical sense. Fighting it is like fighting the fact that 2 + 2 = 4. Perhaps this can help us release regret, accepting that what happened is woven permanently into reality's fabric, and focusing instead on the present moment and how our world line extends from here. The block universe also reshapes anticipation and anxiety about the future. We worry about what will happen, about whether things will turn out well, but if the future exists already, then whatever you're worried about either will happen or won't. It's already determined in the block structure. Your future self already knows how it turned out. Some find this paralyzing. Why plan? Why try if the future is already fixed? But others find it liberating. The future is already taken care of in a sense. You can't control it from your current moment any more than you can control the past. All you can do is exist in your moment, making the choices that are part of your world-line structure, trusting that the complete pattern includes what follows. Let's confront directly what might be the most profound question the block universe raises. What does it mean to die if all moments exist eternally? In the conventional view, death is annihilation. The person who existed ceases to exist. Their consciousness stops. Their experience ends. They pass from being to non-being. But the block universe suggests a different picture. In the block universe, your world line has a definite end, the moment of your death. At that point in space-time, your body ceases to function. Your consciousness stops. Your presence in the world ends. But the world line itself doesn't disappear. Every moment you lived exists eternally in the structure. The you who was alive at age 20 exists forever in that temporal location, experiencing that moment of life as present. Think of it like a film. The movie has a final frame, a point where the story ends, but that doesn't erase the earlier frames. They still exist on the film strip, as real as the final frame. Similarly, death marks the end of your world line, but every moment before that end exists permanently in the four-dimensional structure. This offers a strange form of immortality. You don't continue existing after death in the sense of experiencing moments beyond your world line's endpoint, but you continue existing in all the moments you did experience forever. Every laugh, every thought, every sensation you had in life, all of these remain eternally present in their space-time locations. From the perspective of those who loved you, your death means your world line no longer intersects with theirs. They continue forward in time, but you've reached your endpoint. They can't create new shared moments with you, because their world line extends beyond yours. But all the moments you did share remain eternally real, unchanged by time, permanently inscribed in reality. Some find this deeply comforting. Nothing is lost. The person you were at your best moment, healthy, happy, alive, that person exists forever in that moment. Your consciousness experiencing joy, love, peace. These experiences are eternal components of the block. Death ends your world line, but doesn't erase it. Others find it inadequate. What they want isn't for past moments to exist eternally, but for the person to continue, to have new experiences, to grow and change beyond death. The block universe offers preservation but not continuation. Your dead loved one exists in their lived moments, but not beyond them. They're frozen in time rather than progressing through it. There's also something unsettling about the asymmetry. You approach death from one direction, experiencing time flowing toward it, but from the block universe perspective, all your moments exist simultaneously. Your dying moment exists right now, just as your birth moment does. In some temporal location, you're experiencing your final breath, your last thought. That moment is as real and present as this moment you're experiencing now. Does knowing this change death's meaning? Perhaps it offers a kind of acceptance. Death is not annihilation but completion. Your world line reaches its end, and the complete structure from birth to death exists eternally as your contribution to reality's architecture. You are not a fleeting process but a permanent pattern, a fixed thread in the cosmic tapestry. Or perhaps it makes death more poignant. If every moment exists eternally, then every goodbye is permanent. When world lines diverge through death, they never reconverge. The separation is absolute, written forever into space-time's geometry. There's no reunion because both parties continue existing in their respective temporal locations, unable to interact across the gulf that separates them. The block universe doesn't solve the mystery of death. It doesn't tell us whether consciousness somehow continues beyond the world line's endpoint, doesn't explain what death feels like from the inside, doesn't ease the grief of those left behind, but it offers a framework, death as boundary rather than annihilation, as the end of a line rather than erasure from existence. If every moment exists eternally in the block universe, then every action you take becomes a permanent feature of reality. Every choice, every word spoken, every kindness extended or cruelty inflicted, all of it frozen forever in the four-dimensional structure. This permanence raises profound ethical questions. Does knowing your actions are eternal change their moral weight? Consider a harmful action, a lie you told, a promise you broke, harm you caused someone. In the conventional view, such actions recede into the past. You can apologize, make amends, grow into a better person. The harmful action becomes history, perhaps eventually forgotten. Time, we say, heals wounds. But in the block universe, that harmful action exists eternally in its temporal location. The moment you lied is still happening, the words being spoken forever in that space-time coordinate. The person you harmed exists in that moment, experiencing the harm as present and real. Your later growth and apology exist too, further along your world line, but they don't erase or change the earlier moment. Both exist, permanent features of reality. This might make moral actions feel weightier. You're not just doing something that will recede into the past. You're creating an eternal feature of the universe's structure. Every kind act is a permanent addition to reality, a bright thread in the space-time tapestry. Every cruelty is a permanent dark thread, unchangeable and enduring. Some ethical frameworks might find this perspective valuable. If your actions are eternal, you have even more reason to act well, to create moments of beauty and kindness, rather than ugliness and harm. You're not just affecting the temporary present, but sculpting the eternal structure of existence itself. But there's a troubling implication. If the future exists already, if your actions are already determined in the block structure, then in what sense are you morally responsible for them? Responsibility seems to require the ability to do otherwise, to have genuine choice. But if your world line is fixed, extending from birth to death with all choices already made, how can you be held responsible for actions that couldn't have been different? One response appeals to compatibilism in the free will debate. Even if your actions are determined, they still flow from your character, your values, your deliberation. You're responsible because the action is yours, caused by who you are, even if who you are and what you do are fixed features of the block. Moral responsibility doesn't require the ability to do otherwise. It requires that your actions reflect your agency. Another consideration: within your temporal location, within your moment of choice, the future is unknown to you. Even if your choice exists already in the block, you don't know what it is until you make it. From your perspective, you genuinely deliberate, genuinely feel the weight of decision. This subjective openness might be sufficient for moral responsibility, even if objectively the choice is fixed. The block universe also affects how we think about redemption and moral progress. Can you redeem past wrongs if they exist eternally, unchangeable? Perhaps redemption isn't about erasing past wrongs, but about adding new moments of goodness to your world line. The harmful action remains, but so does your apology, your growth, your subsequent kindness. The complete pattern of your world line includes both, and perhaps that's what redemption means. Not deletion, but context. Not erasure, but addition. Consider also the permanence of virtue, acts of extraordinary kindness, moments of courage or compassion, sacrifices made for others. These too are eternal. The nurse who comforted the dying patient, the person who intervened to prevent harm, the quiet acts of daily kindness, all permanent features of reality. If anything deserves to exist eternally, perhaps it's these moments of goodness. The block universe doesn't resolve ethical questions but reframes them. It asks us to think of moral life not as a journey through time toward becoming better, but as the creation of a pattern in space-time, a structure that includes both our failures and our triumphs, permanently woven into the fabric of existence. How we act doesn't just affect the future, it shapes eternity. Let's explore more deeply the question of regret, because few things haunt us more persistently than the conviction that we chose wrongly, that we could have done better, that the past should have been different. Regret can be a kind of torture, a constant wishing to undo what's done. The block universe offers a particular, and perhaps surprisingly helpful, perspective on this ancient human struggle. In the conventional view of time, the past is gone, but in principle could have been different. When you regret a choice, you're imagining an alternative timeline where you chose better. That alternative seems possible, seems like it could have been real if only you had been wiser, braver, kinder. The fact that it didn't happen feels contingent, like a failure on your part. But in the block universe, the past not only is unchangeable, which we all know intellectually, but exists eternally, as part of reality's fixed structure. The you who made that choice you regret, they exist forever in that moment, making that choice. It's not that the choice could have been different and happened to turn out this way. Rather, this is simply how reality is structured. The choice is a geometric fact, like the angle of a triangle. This might seem to make regret worse. You're eternally stuck with your mistakes, unable even in principle to undo them. Every failure is permanent, every wrong choice frozen forever. But considered differently, this permanence might offer a path toward acceptance and peace. Here's why. If your past choice exists eternally and unchangeably in the block structure, then regretting it is precisely equivalent to regretting a fact of mathematics. You might wish that 2 + 2 = 5, but wishing can't make it so. Similarly, wishing that your past self chose differently can't alter the fixed geometry of space-time. The regret becomes recognizable as futile, not because change is merely difficult, but because change is metaphysically impossible. This absolute impossibility might be liberating. You can stop fighting the past, stop wishing it were different, because it's as unchangeable as the laws of logic. What happened is woven permanently into reality's fabric, and no amount of regret will alter it. Perhaps this can help shift focus from the unchangeable past to the present moment and the extension of your world line from here. Moreover, the block universe preserves the you who made that choice. They exist in their moment with their knowledge, their capabilities, their constraints. From their perspective, which is a real perspective, eternally present in that temporal location, the choice they made was the best they could do, or at least the choice that made sense to them at that time. The you now, with additional experience and wisdom, might see it differently, but you now isn't the one who made the choice. You then made it, and they're preserved forever in their moment of decision. This doesn't excuse harmful choices or eliminate the need for accountability. The consequences of your actions also exist eternally, affecting other world lines that intersected with yours, but it might offer some self-compassion, some recognition that the person you were did the best they could with who they were at that moment. The block universe also suggests that regret itself is part of your world line structure. The fact that you now regret past choices is itself a permanent feature of reality. Your regret, your growth from reflecting on mistakes, your increased wisdom, all of this exists eternally too, further along your world line. The complete pattern includes both the mistake and the learning, both the failure and the growth that followed. Perhaps this is what redemption looks like in a block universe. Not changing the past, but creating a complete structure that includes both failure and recovery, both harm and amends, both ignorance and wisdom. Your world line doesn't erase its earlier portions, but it extends beyond them, adding new moments that respond to and build on what came before. Some might object that this makes regret meaningless, that if the past is unchangeable we shouldn't feel bad about it. But the block universe doesn't eliminate feelings, it contextualizes them. Regret can still serve a function, motivating you to act differently in present moments, helping you extend your world line in better directions from here. The past is fixed, but your present choices shape how your world line extends forward, how the pattern develops from this point. Let's turn now to love, perhaps the most powerful force in human experience, and explore what it means in the context of the block universe. When you love someone, when you feel profound connection with another person, what is the geometry of that love? How does it exist in the four-dimensional structure of space-time? Imagine two world lines, yours and someone you love. These are four-dimensional threads extending through space-time from birth to death for each of you. When you meet, your world lines intersect, coming close together in the geometric structure. When you spend time together, the world lines run parallel for a while, close and interacting. When you separate, perhaps temporarily, perhaps permanently, the world lines diverge, moving apart in space-time. Love, in this picture, is the intertwining of world lines. Every shared moment, every conversation, every touch, every look exchanged is a point where the world lines interact, where one influences the other. These interactions create patterns, resonances, connections that affect how both world lines extend forward. You change each other, shape each other's paths through space-time, become part of each other's structure. In the block universe, all of these interactions exist eternally. The first time you met exists forever in its temporal location, that moment of connection frozen in space-time. Every subsequent shared moment exists too. Dinners and arguments, quiet evenings and grand adventures, moments of profound intimacy and casual comfort, all of it permanent, all of it part of the eternal structure. When you remember these moments, you're accessing information about other regions of space-time where your world line intersects with your loved ones. The memories aren't the moments themselves, those exist in their own temporal locations, but they connect you across time to those permanent features of reality. In this sense, the past isn't gone, it's simply elsewhere in space-time, as real as ever, but at different coordinates. Consider what this means for relationships that end, whether through breakup, distance, or death. Sometimes world lines diverge permanently, the intertwining ceases, the lines move apart and don't reconverge. This creates genuine loss. You can't create new shared moments, can't extend the connection forward from your current temporal location, but the block universe preserves everything that was. Every moment of love, every instance of connection, Every time the world lines intertwined, all of this exists eternally. The relationship isn't erased by its ending, it's simply complete, a finite stretch of intertwined world lines within the infinite structure of space-time. The love you shared is a permanent geometric feature of reality. There's something both comforting and melancholic about this. Comforting because nothing is lost. Every beautiful moment exists forever. Melancholic because you can't access those moments from your current position, can't create new ones if the world lines have diverged. You're separated by space-time itself, unable to bridge the gap. For ongoing relationships, the block universe offers a different perspective. If the future exists already, then all the moments you'll share with your loved one are already there, already frozen in the structure. The conversations you haven't had yet are already happening in their temporal locations. The love you'll feel tomorrow exists right now, just as real as the love you feel today. Does knowing this change the experience of love? Perhaps it adds a sense of eternal significance. You're not just creating temporary moments of connection, but weaving permanent patterns into reality's structure. Every act of love is an eternal thread in the tapestry, every kindness a permanent bright spot in space-time. Or perhaps it makes love feel predetermined, robbing it of spontaneity and freedom. If the course of your relationship is already laid out in the block, if every moment of connection and conflict is fixed, where's the genuine choice, the real risk that makes love meaningful? But maybe this is thinking about it wrong. Even if the pattern is fixed, you still live through it moment by moment, experiencing each interaction as present and real. The world lines intertwine because of genuine connection, genuine choice, genuine feeling, all of which exist as part of the structure. The love isn't less real for being eternal. Perhaps it's more real, more significant, more worthy of wonder. We've journeyed far through the landscape of the block universe, exploring its implications, confronting its challenges, wondering about its meaning for our lives. But now, as we approach the end of this exploration, it's important to acknowledge how much remains uncertain, how much we simply cannot know about time's true nature. The block universe is a hypothesis, an interpretation of what our best physics might be telling us about reality. It's not proven fact. Other interpretations exist. The growing block, presentism, various quantum theories of time. The evidence doesn't definitively favor one view over others. We're in territory where physics blends with metaphysics, where science meets philosophy, and certainty becomes elusive. Consider our fundamental limitation. We're inside time. We experience reality from within the flow of moments, unable to step outside and observe time's structure objectively. It's like trying to understand the shape of a forest when you can only see the tree immediately in front of you. We infer time's nature from our limited perspective, but we can't verify our inferences with direct observation of the whole structure. Moreover, our best physics remains incomplete. We don't yet have a theory that successfully unifies quantum mechanics with general relativity. At the smallest scales and the earliest moments of the universe, our current theories break down. Whatever the ultimate theory of quantum gravity turns out to be, it might reveal aspects of time we currently can't imagine. Perhaps time emerges from something more fundamental. Perhaps at the deepest level, time doesn't exist at all in any form we'd recognize. The hard problem of consciousness adds another layer of uncertainty. We don't understand how subjective experience arises from physical processes. The vivid sense of now, the feeling of time flowing, the experience of being a self extended through time. Physics can't currently explain these. Perhaps they're illusions, artifacts of information processing. Perhaps they point to aspects of reality physics doesn't capture. We don't know. Even the experiments that seem to support relativity in the block universe have alternative interpretations. Different philosophical frameworks can accommodate the same experimental results. The data constrains our theories but doesn't uniquely determine them. Multiple worldviews remain consistent with everything we've observed. This uncertainty isn't a failure of science but a reminder of the question's depth. Time is so fundamental to existence that understanding its nature touches the limits of what inquiry can achieve. We're asking about the framework within which all our investigations occur. It's not surprising that definitive answers elude us. Perhaps there's beauty in this uncertainty. The block universe offers one way of thinking about time, elegant, mathematically grounded, philosophically rich, but it's a possibility, not a certainty. We hold it lightly, exploring its implications while remaining open to alternatives, to new evidence, to shifts in understanding. The honest position might be humble agnosticism. We don't know if the block universe is real. We don't know if time flows or stands still, if the future exists or is genuinely open, if all moments are equally real, or the present is somehow privileged. We have theories, interpretations, philosophical preferences, but knowledge, certain knowledge, remains beyond our reach, and maybe that's okay. Maybe the uncertainty is part of what makes these questions worth contemplating. If we knew definitively how time worked, the mystery would dissolve. Instead, we're left with wonder, with multiple possibilities to turn over in our minds, with the recognition that reality might be stranger than we can currently conceive. Whatever the truth about time's nature, whether the block universe is real or time flows in some other way, there's something we can say with certainty. You exist, right here, right now. This moment of consciousness, this experience of being aware and alive, is real regardless of the metaphysical framework we use to understand it. And that's remarkable. Think about it. You're a pattern of matter and energy, organized in such a way that the universe becomes aware of itself through you. Atoms that formed in the hearts of ancient stars have assembled into the structure that is your body, your brain, your consciousness, your stardust that learned to think, to feel, to wonder about time and existence. Whether your world line is a fixed thread in an eternal block or a path being created moment by moment through flowing time, the fact remains, this path exists, and it's yours. The particular configuration of matter and energy that is you experiencing this moment, this is real, this matters, this is extraordinary simply by virtue of being. The block universe perspective, if true, doesn't diminish this wonder. Yes, every moment might exist eternally, frozen in four-dimensional structure, but that means this moment, you reading these words, resting here, contemplating these ideas, this exists forever as part of reality's architecture. Your consciousness experiencing wonder right now is a permanent feature of existence. If anything, that makes it more remarkable, not less. And if the block universe is wrong, if time flows and moments come into being and pass away, that's remarkable too. You're experiencing genuine becoming, genuine novelty, the universe creating new reality, instant by instant. Each moment is fresh, unprecedented, a new addition to the growing structure. You're witnessing and participating in creation itself. Either way, whether frozen or flowing, the fact of your existence invites wonder. The particular path through space and time that is your life, the specific experiences you've had and will have, the unique perspective from which you observe reality. All of this is, in some sense, miraculous. There could have been nothing instead of something. There could have been something without consciousness. There could have been consciousness without you. But here you are. Consider what had to align for you to exist. The laws of physics permitting stable matter, stars forging heavy elements, planets forming inhabitable zones, life emerging and evolving through billions of years, your particular ancestors meeting and surviving and reproducing through countless generations, the specific egg and sperm that combined to create you. The probability seems impossibly small, and yet it happened. You're the result of an inconceivable sequence of contingencies, all of which somehow align to produce this moment of awareness. The block universe or flowing time, determinism or free will, eternalism or presentism, these philosophical frameworks matter, but they don't change the fundamental fact. Existence is astonishing. Consciousness is astonishing. Your particular instantiation of consciousness, right here, right now, is astonishing. Maybe the deepest response to understanding, or not understanding, time is simple gratitude. Gratitude for existence, for awareness, for the chance to experience reality from your unique perspective, however briefly or eternally. Gratitude for this moment, which is either all there ever is, or one slice of an eternal structure, but either way worthy of appreciation. Let's return one final time to the core idea we've been exploring. If the block universe is real, then every version of you that has ever existed continues to exist, right now, in their own temporal location. Your 5-year-old self playing in the backyard, your teenage self struggling with questions of identity, the you who fell in love for the first time, the you who experienced loss, all of them, all of you, existing eternally in the four-dimensional structure of space-time. It's a strange thought to hold as we near the end of this journey. Every moment you've lived, not just remembered but actually lived, exists forever. The first time you saw the ocean, the last conversation with someone who's gone, the quiet morning when everything felt possible, the difficult night when nothing seemed right. All of these moments are still happening, somewhere in space-time, as present and real as this moment you're experiencing now, and the moments you haven't reached yet. If the block universe is true, these exist too. Tomorrow's sunrise is already there, waiting for your consciousness to arrive at it. The last day of your life exists, though you don't know when or where it is. Every laugh you'll laugh, every tear you'll cry, every thought you'll think between now and then, all already present in the structure, waiting only for your subjective experience to reach them. This means you're vastly more extensive than you might have imagined. You're not just a single point of consciousness moving through time, but rather a whole structure spanning from birth to death. Every age you've been and will be exists simultaneously. You're simultaneously the infant who doesn't yet know their own name, and the adult contemplating time's mysteries, and everyone in between. Consider what this means for identity. Who are you? The conventional answer would be, you're this current moment of consciousness, informed by memories of past selves and plans for future selves. But in the block universe, you're all of it at once, the totality of your world line, every moment from first to last, all existing together in the eternal now. Every version of you is living their life, experiencing their present, unaware of the other yous except through memory and anticipation. The child you doesn't know the adult you exists. The current you doesn't know exactly who the future you will be. Each version is complete in themselves, experiencing their moment as the present, yet all connected by the continuous thread of your world line through space-time. There's something profound and humbling about this expanded view of self. You contain multitudes, not metaphorically but literally, if the block universe is real. Every version of you that has existed or will exist is you, equally real, equally present in the eternal structure. You're not a single note, but an entire symphony played out across time, and nothing is lost. Not a single moment, not a single experience, not a single version of who you've been. Everything you've ever been continues to exist, forever, preserved in reality's architecture. The block universe offers a kind of absolute preservation, a guarantee that nothing truly vanishes. Whether this is comforting or troubling might depend on your temperament and your experiences, but either way, it's remarkable to contemplate that you might be not a fleeting process but an eternal structure, not a momentary ripple but a permanent wave, frozen in the fabric of space-time itself. And now, as this exploration draws to its close, let's rest together in this moment, whatever this moment truly is. Whether it's a slice in an eternal four-dimensional block, or a genuinely flowing instant being created as the universe unfolds, it's real. You're here. This is now. Perhaps the deepest wisdom isn't choosing between the block universe and its alternatives, but recognizing that the question itself might be less important than the experience. However time works, frozen or flowing, determined or open, eternal or transient, your experience in this moment is genuine. The wonder you feel, the peace you're settling into, the consciousness that's aware of these ideas, all of this is real, whatever its ultimate metaphysical status. If the block universe is true, then this moment exists forever. Your consciousness right now resting and wondering is a permanent feature of reality. Every moment of peace you've ever experienced exists eternally, including this one. You can rest knowing that this quiet space, this gentle contemplation, is written permanently into the structure of existence. If time flows and moments come into being and pass away, then this moment is precious precisely because it's fleeting. It will never come again. This particular configuration of consciousness, experiencing these particular thoughts, is unique and temporary. You can rest in its transience, appreciating the beauty of something ephemeral. Either way, there's peace to be found. Peace in permanence or peace in flow. Peace in knowing or peace in mystery. Peace in the eternal preservation of all moments, or peace in the continuous creation of new ones. The framework changes, but the possibility of rest remains. As you lie here, feel the weight of your body, the rhythm of your breath. These physical sensations are your immediate connection to reality, whatever reality's ultimate nature. Your embodied consciousness, experiencing existence from the inside, and that's enough. That's everything. Let the questions about time drift gently into the background. Let the wonder remain, but let it be soft, peaceful wonder, rather than anxious seeking. You've explored these ideas, turned them over, considered their implications. Now you can rest with them, holding them lightly, allowing them to settle into whatever meaning they'll have for you. Every version of you, past, present, and perhaps future, is part of a larger pattern. Whether that pattern is frozen eternally in a block universe, or unfolding moment by moment in flowing time, you're woven into it. You belong to existence. You're part of the universe's way of knowing itself, and right now, in this moment, that's all you need to be. Sleep well, if sleep is what comes next. Rest well in the eternal present, whatever that present truly is, and know that this moment of peace, like every moment, is real and meaningful, and part of the great mystery of being.